All local authorities are now required to produce design codes. Design codes can be used to sustain an area's significance. The way areas have grown and developed is key to understanding what is most significant and significance worthy of being sustained and enhanced through design codes. For this demonstration, we are using Central Reading as a studying area. It is located to the west of London and on a gravel spur in between the rivers Kennet and Thames. It is surrounded by clay, a key natural resource used in brickmaking and central to understanding the wonderfully decorative clay brick buildings synonymous with Reading. The study of urban morphology is a method that enables us to be systematic in the way that we identify and define characteristics that are unique and significant, and therefore worthy of preservation and enhancement. The way we identify character areas is by understanding the historic development and analysing the structure around which the urban tissue formed. The synthesis area comparisons enables us to assess the modern townscape and identify what is truly unique about it. The study area is located within the red line boundary shown on Figure 3. Reading originally formed at fording points on the Kennet nearby Reading Minster Church. St Mary's is the location of the Minster Market, established during Saxon times, which grew and attracted settlement, which then expanded. The settlement attracted an abbey that established to the northeast. The abbey created its own market in competition with the Minster Market and created new roads that bypassed the Minster Market to trade directly with Oxford to the north, London to the east, Southampton to the south, and Bath to the west. By bypassing the Minster Market to join principal routes on the outskirts of the settlement. This continued for many centuries as Reading grew and developed, with the associated interaction of the two markets and the creation of routes and surrounding urban tissue to define the shape of Reading. This is most easily seen on John Speed's map. We can see that Reading maintains this shape throughout the early post-medieval times, as seen on Charles Tompkins' map. During the Industrial Revolution, a number of industrial sites were located on the river, and the residential core of Reading expanded into the hinterland, as seen on Ordnance Survey mapping, coloured in green. Reading's most famous industries were bricks, bulbs, biscuits, and brewing, known as the 4 Bs. After the Industrial Revolution, the industrial sites were redeveloped into large modern development sites that we see in the inner suburbs of Reading today. These areas now form part of the inner suburban fringe, this short synopsis of key historic moments that demonstrate how important mapping Reading's development is to understanding its most significant elements. What is the most significant in those key historic snapshots? Most significant are the prospering markets, historically competitive, that helped create Reading's urban tissue and associated transport routes that have helped to shape its growth. Historic maps show the way the settlement pattern grew and changed. Such maps show the growth during medieval times out of the town centre along the trading routes. The extent of Reading then may be compared with the Victorian expansion during Industrial Revolution and the transformation delivered via the extent of modern redevelopment zones, shown in blue. The continuity of settlement is key to understanding significant physical surviving townscape features. For example, the urban core is an area of high density comparative to lower density within suburban areas. Suburban areas became redeveloped during Victorian times and redeveloped again in modern times to become inner suburban areas. This can also be seen through route structure analysis, surmised from historic mapping in the 1600s, outlined on the map at the top left. Route structure analysis is based around the interrelationship between routes that are primary, secondary, and pericentric routes. Primary routes are connected to settlements and are shown in red. The Abbey organised pericentric routes to bypass the Minster Market. Route interrelationships changed as political power changed and Reading expanded. On the top right map, we see the development of east and west thoroughfares, enabling expansion that continued into modern times until Reading formed as it is today, shown on the map below. The hierarchy of those routes has changed over time and has been influenced by growth and change in the urban tissue. Transformation is evidenced by the introduction of the inner distribution road and is associated with slum clearance. The inner distribution road eased traffic congestion, though it has created pedestrian barriers and severed a number of character areas from the urban core. Having assessed the modern morphology, we can now identify character areas that is best demonstrated through a colour-coded map. Each character area is unique and the result of historic development within each of those specific zones. Some are urban and some are suburban. The focus for the trial design guide are 3 character areas: Reading Central character area, Reading Abbey Civic and Jail character area, and the inner suburb character area, centred on London Street. The way that we define significance within each area is architectural, historic, archaeological, and artistic, and its context. The context, particularly its setting and the sense of identity within wider context of the town, is helpful in understanding what is most important to defining the character. We will look at each in turn, beginning with Reading Central character area. The archaeological interest within this area includes medieval and post-medieval habitation, structures and deposits. Some may require preservation in situ, although the majority may be mitigated through preservation by record. The historic built environment is high-density buildings with narrow plots, creating fine-grained urban development. The propensity to high density has continued as seen in modern infill. The historic architectural style is largely eclectic and decorative Victorian and Edwardian retail. The infill illustrates modern architectural design, which is quite simple and built in glass and aluminium cladding. In contrast, the historic Victorian retail is built in brick, with brick and terracotta detailing. There are some examples of stone-built buildings. The identity and sense of place largely derives from the Victorian and Edwardian retail zones. In contrast, Reading Abbey, Civic and Jail character area contains an extensive scheduled monument that calls for areas preserved in situ within design guidance and lesser degrees of protection beyond the surviving remains of the abbey. There are 18th and 19th century civic and residential buildings that are highly decorative, and a number of modern commercial infill buildings of much larger scale and greater height. The architectural style is varied with characteristically commercial buildings. Brick and terracotta detailing form an important element of the characteristic materials, and modern commercial buildings are metal and glass. The identity and sense of place largely revolve around the civic and religious core of this historic area. The southern historic inner suburb has very different character of lower density and greater variety of building types. The buried heritage interest revolves around medieval habitation and industrial activity and later post-medieval development. There are a number of surviving medieval buildings interspersed between Victorian development of 18th and 19th century retail and residential buildings, in addition to modern infill, both commercial and residential units of greater scale and massing than the historic buildings, which are finer grain and lower scale. Though a wide range of built environment is represented, it is coherent in the rhythm and scale that changes as the viewer progresses up and downhill into and out of the town, and expressed in representative materials and colour palette. Materials consist of red brick and contrasting brick detailing, stone elevations and some rendered buildings. The modern buildings, in contrast, are glazed or cladded, with some surviving timber-framed medieval buildings visible on the corner plots that meet with lanes that extend back to the rear of the properties and into the side streets. The identity of the area is one of gradual suburban growth with contemporary residential units. In summary, by identifying these unique characteristics, we can begin to compile design guidance that helps to enhance these features. We will provide more information about this work as the work progresses.